For these tutorials, you'll see me change terminal windows between 2 or 3 systems. I've chosen to use some tools called Vagrant and VirtualBox to install a number of guest hosts on my Macintosh laptop. These tools are also available for Windows. I'm using an open source tool called Test Kitchen to streamline how I am managing these systems. Test Kitchen is a project sponsored by Chef Software and is freely available. I installed it as part of the Chef DK or Chef Developers Kit on my Mac. So things I'm using: VirtualBox, Vagrant, Test Kitchen. These are all freely available. VirtualBox is an Oracle project. You can download it for a number of different platforms. Vagrant, a product of HashiCorp. Lots of documentation on the Vagrant site. A lot of good things in here if you want to simply work with guest systems on a regular piece of hardware and not have a special dedicated hardware. Finally, Chef Development Kit brings Test Kitchen along. It's available for different platforms as well. Test Kitchen itself, located at kitchen.ci. So let's take a look at my actual configuration. I'm running a couple of different systems at a time, and I keep them in a kitchen.yml markup file. In order to build the systems used in the lessons, I have them all configured here. The file itself is pretty straightforward. It contains a couple of definitions for which kinds of systems I want to use and what distros to use to load them. I'm using an Ubuntu 14.04 system, which is the LTS long-term support version of Ubuntu, CentOS 6.5 box, and I added a CentOS 7.1 system. So they're all here in the platforms section of this file. I'm using the plugin for Vagrant, so that I'm actually using Vagrant on top of VirtualBox with Test Kitchen. There's a lot of other stuff that Test Kitchen can do. It's mostly around testing for configuration management. I'm using it mostly to fire up all of these hosts so that I don't have to use the Vagrant tools. In order to actually fire these up, take a look here at the history. All I end up doing with them is running what's called a kitchen converge. And kitchen converge goes out and actually starts building all of these boxes. So VirtualBox, you have some kind of source system that comes down. It's really an image of the operating system itself. So kind of like an ISO image or similar things that are built there. I'm pulling these down from a project called Bento, which is sponsored by Chef Software as well. They're all stored in a directory in my home directory, VirtualBox VMs. I have a number of different ones in here. I have some old stuff. I have some new stuff. I've got Ubuntu 12.04 for no apparent reason at all, but a bunch of different things that I can use anytime I want to use a virtual system on top of my laptop. All of this initialization might take some time, because if I've asked for a new operating system, it's going to go and download all of the image. Here I've got in the green the initialization for the Ubuntu 14.04 box. So it's looking for the default for this version, importing the base box. If it ends up not finding a base box for this version of Ubuntu, it's going to download that, and these may be fairly large. They're going to be at least a few hundred megs. So depending on how long that takes to download on my network, I might be waiting a while, especially if I'm firing up a lot of systems like I am here. The yellow is the CentOS 6.5 box. So I have a lot of options for the boxes that I want to use, if I want to make use of more than one box at a time, or if I just want to use one host at a time. Test Kitchen itself is a little quirky. I'm using it in a way that it runs for a fairly long time. It's not necessarily the best tool for that. You can also use the Vagrant tools directly. So Vagrant itself has a bunch of information about how to write a Vagrant file, which is a definition of the host that you want to use. And it allows you to actually suspend the Vagrant guests instead of just completely shutting them off. Test Kitchen meant more for short-running boxes. So the actual configuration for what these machines look like is stored in the .kitchen directory, and each of them that are in here have their own subdirs. I have some YAML files. Let's look at that one. Just some basic user information there. It tells me what port these are on. I'm going to SSH into these boxes. So they're guests running on my laptop, and I'm going to log into them via SSH. I have no access to them from the interface from the rest of the Mac. I have an SSH key that comes along as part of my kitchen installation that's basically created for these hosts while they're running. In my kitchen Vagrant directory, I have subdirectories for the other boxes themselves. So we cd into, okay. The Vagrant file that's here, has enough information in it that I could use this to run Vagrant Up and Vagrant Suspend and the other Vagrant-centric tools so that I wouldn't necessarily have to use Test Kitchen on top of it. So I've kind of cheated. I have Test Kitchen that is firing up all these systems for me. It's creating the Vagrant file. If I want to make use of just Vagrant and not use Test Kitchen, I can take these Vagrant files as my Vagrant skeletons and bring them over to another directory and use them just with the Vagrant tools. Vagrant, kind of an interesting piece of software as well. You can use it not just for Linux, but for other operating system images. People are working on improving the support for things like Windows all the time. If you are really just starting to learn a specific operating system, you don't want to make a large monetary investment, definitely worth learning how to use VirtualBox, Vagrant, maybe Test Kitchen to help you get ahead on learning whatever it is that you're looking for. You can also fire some of this stuff up in the cloud, but that of course costs money, and these pieces are all freely available. Highly recommended you take a look at how you get Vagrant, VirtualBox, maybe Test Kitchen running on your system.